The latest Young and the Restless Whispers are trying to play it off like it's no big deal. Detective Burrow packed up his life in Los Angeles and relocated to the Grand Canyon. Easy as that. Like a man simply woke up one morning and decided he wanted more sunsets and fewer sirens. But in Genoa city logic, nothing is ever easy as that, and no one with real leverage moves anywhere without a reason, a push, or a shadow following behind them. You don't go from a city like Los Angeles where a detective learns to read lies the way other people read street signs to somewhere as stark and open as the Grand Canyon unless you're running from something, hunting something, or being positioned like a chess piece for the next phase of a bigger game. And yes, the most obvious name that floats in the air the moment you hear quiet relocation is Victor Newman. Because Victor has a long history of making complicated problems look like clean coincidences. It would be so perfectly Victor to help a talented detective find a fresh start, not out of kindness, but because Victor understands the value of a man who can dig through secrets without flinching. Even if we pretend Victor isn't involved, even if we accept the public-facing version that Burrow simply needed a change of scenery, there's still that faint smell of strategy in the air. The kind that clings to people who have been too close to power for too long. And there's something else that makes this move feel like more than a career decision. The unspoken suggestion that Burrow might be drawn to Sharon Newman. The kind of magnetic pull that doesn't announce itself as romance at first, but shows up as curiosity, concern, a lingering look that lasts 1 second too long. People are quick to say that part has nothing to do with it, and that's exactly how Y&R hides what matters most by dismissing it before it explodes. What's genuinely exciting is that Burrow is not a one-note character. Y&R could use him in 100 ways. The classic investigator who shows up to expose a lie, the reluctant protector who gets pulled into a family war, the outsider who sees Genoa City with fresh eyes and refuses to accept its polished excuses. He is a walking vault of potential storylines because he can stand in the space between the law and the truth, and those are not always the same thing in this town. Right now, though, there's one direction that feels dangerously inevitable. The kind of storyline that doesn't just create drama, it detonates it. The possibility that Burrow has a past connection to Audra Charles. Audra is the type of character who survives by reinventing herself, by controlling the narrative, by turning every messy situation into a stepping stone. She doesn't just keep secrets, she curates them, trims them, reshapes them into versions that won't hurt her. But the problem with a curated past is that it only stays curated as long as nobody with real skill starts digging. That's where Burrow becomes a nightmare waiting to happen, because a detective with Los Angeles experience doesn't chase gossip, he follows patterns. If Burrow overlapped with Audra's LA era in any meaningful way, even indirectly, he could be holding the kind of information that turns her entire present-day persona into a fragile stage set. He might not even realize at first what he has, or he might realize it immediately and choose to sit on it, because there is nothing more powerful than knowledge you haven't used yet. The real threat is not simply that Burrow knows something about Audra, but that he could know it in a way that is provable: documents, old casework, names, dates. The kind of details that don't bend under pressure. And that's why the current Audra Holden LA thread has started to feel like it's reached its limit. It's not that it was pointless, it served its purpose. It established a history, hinted at mischief, painted an atmosphere of things done in the shadows, and explained away later. But the show is clearly pivoting, because Holden Novak and Claire Newman heading back to California for work signals something important. The storyline is no longer about being in Los Angeles. It's about what Los Angeles left behind. Holden's role here is especially telling. He's positioned as the guy who will make sure Kane Ashby's family is okay, which sounds noble on the surface, but in soap logic it also reads like penance. It feels like Holden is trying to stabilize the damage, to keep the fallout contained, to make sure whatever he was involved in doesn't ripple outward and destroy people who don't deserve it. That protective instinct can be genuine, but it can also be strategic. If the truth gets out, the people closest to it become collateral, and Holden may be trying to prevent that. Claire, on the other hand, is not built to let mystery stay buried. Claire is persistence with a heartbeat. She doesn't just want answers, she wants to understand the structure of the lie, who benefited, who got hurt, who is still lying now. Her refusal to drop the issue makes her dangerous to Audra, because Claire isn't emotional chaos, she's focused pressure. She will pull on the thread until the whole sweater comes apart, even if someone insists the sweater is fine. That's where the possibility of Sienna Bacall enters like a cool breeze that turns into a storm. Sienna is the kind of character who could approach Claire with the softest voice and the most careful questions, pretending she's just curious, pretending she's only interested in context, when in reality she's collecting leverage. A conversation with Sienna could be framed as harmless, but the moment someone asks for confidential details or hints at classified intel, the stakes shift. Claire might think she's the hunter, but Sienna's presence suggests Claire could also be prey. Yet even if Sienna tries to pull information from Claire, there is another source of intelligence from that era who might be far more valuable and far more unpredictable: Burrow. Because Burrow is not part of the emotional entanglements the way Claire and Holden are. He isn't trying to protect a family because of guilt. He isn't trying to win a rivalry. He's a professional trained to observe, to remember, to document. If he knows something about the mischief Audra and Holden caused in LA, he may know it in a clean, brutal way, facts that can't be seduced, manipulated, or reinterpreted. And that is exactly what makes him so explosive as a narrative device. He can turn speculation into certainty, rumors into receipts, suspicions into consequences. Now imagine how this could realistically unfold while staying completely grounded in character logic. Claire returns to California with Holden, and she tells herself it's just work, just logistics, just a necessary step. But the moment she's back in that environment, the memories sharpen. The places, the routines, the old energy, everything starts to feel like a clue. Claire begins to pick up on inconsistencies in what Holden says and what he avoids saying. Holden tries to keep the focus on the present: Kane's family, immediate safety, damage control, because that's how you survive a messy past. You keep people busy with what's right in front of them. But Claire isn't busy-minded, she's pattern-minded. She starts cross-referencing small details, recalling names, noticing how Audra's narrative always seems to have convenient blind spots. At the same time, Audra senses the shift. Audra doesn't need proof that Claire is digging. She can feel it. Audra is the kind of person who reads thread in tone and timing, who notices when a person's curiosity becomes structured. She starts tightening her circle, controlling her messaging, possibly even trying to charm or intimidate Claire into dropping it. But Claire has a Newman streak in her. When someone tries to control her, she becomes even more determined not to be controlled. This is when Burrow's relocation matters in a way that's more than geography. A detective who has moved to a place like the Grand Canyon isn't necessarily out of the game. In many ways, he's in a better position. He's away from the noise, away from immediate interference, able to look at a case from a distance and see what he couldn't see while he was too close. Burrow could receive a casual inquiry, maybe from Claire, maybe from someone connected to Sharon, maybe even indirectly through Victor's network, and at first it feels like a small professional favor. A name is mentioned, a date, a situation. Burrow's brain clicks, not dramatically, but quietly, because that's how real recognition happens, not with fireworks, but with a cold moment of clarity. He remembers Audra, or he remembers someone tied to Audra, or he remembers a case that got smothered before it could breathe. And suddenly Burrow understands, he didn't just move to find peace, he moved to a place where the silence would make it impossible to ignore what he knows. The most compelling angle is that Burrow doesn't have to be a hero or a villain to blow this up. He just has to be a man with professional integrity and personal curiosity, a man who doesn't like being used. If Victor had anything to do with his relocation, Burrow could resent that even as he benefits from it. If Sharon becomes a point of emotional gravity in his new life, Burrow could be pulled toward Genoa City, not because of a case, but because of a person who makes him feel human again. That's the kind of tension Y&R loves, a character trying to do the right thing for the right reasons, while powerful people try to steer them toward the right thing for the wrong reasons. Burrow's connection to Sharon could become the quiet thread that ties him back into the chaos, because Sharon is the kind of character who attracts complicated protectors. People want to save her, or be saved by her, or prove something to themselves through her. If Burrow finds himself caring about Sharon, he may become more invested in what threatens her world, and Audra's secrets could become part of that threat, even if Sharon is not directly involved. The town's secrets are interconnected like roots beneath the soil. You pull on one, and the whole ground shifts. Meanwhile, Audra's biggest vulnerability has always been that she believes she can outrun consequences if she stays sharp enough. She believes she can redirect blame, reshape perception, weaponize relationships. But a detective is not a rival you can flirt with or sabotage through corporate maneuvers. A detective is someone who lives for the moment your story collapses under the weight of its own contradictions. Burrow's potential involvement introduces a level of danger Audra may not have faced in a long time, the danger of someone who doesn't want her job, doesn't want her status, doesn't need her approval, someone who just wants the truth and who knows how to get it. If Audra senses Burrow is circling, she might try to preemptively discredit him, frame him as obsessed, as biased, as unreliable. She might even try to turn the narrative into something personal, accuse him of being drawn to Sharon, imply he's acting emotionally, suggest he's being used by Victor. And here's the scary part, some of those claims could be partially true, which makes them even more effective. The best lies always sit close to reality. But the presence of partial truth doesn't erase the facts Burrow might bring forward, it just makes the fallout messier. That's what makes this storyline feel like it could genuinely explode. Because it's not just about mischief in LA, it's about the present-day power dynamics that LA history could destabilize. Claire's refusal to give up becomes the engine. Holden's protective mission becomes the pressure valve that might fail. Sienna's quiet probing becomes the spark, Burrow becomes the match. And Victor, whether he's involved or not, remains the gravitational force that ensures nothing stays contained for long. The show can slowly tighten the tension in a way that feels inevitable. Claire asking the wrong question at the wrong time, Sienna noticing and reporting it, Audra trying to shut it down. Holden getting caught between loyalty and honesty, Burrow stepping in with information that changes the tone of everything. Once Burrow speaks, once he confirms that Audra's past isn't just suspicious but documented, the story can pivot from what happened to what happens now. And that's where soap opera brilliance lies, because the real drama isn't the secret itself, it's the chain reaction of who panics, who denies, who betrays, who protects, and who finally decides that burning everything down is safer than letting the truth breathe. And the most deliciously Y&R element is that nobody will come out of this clean. Claire will feel vindicated, but also haunted by how far she had to go to be heard. Holden will either become a better man through accountability or crack under the weight of trying to hold everything together. Audra will fight like hell, not just to protect her reputation, but to protect the version of herself she built to survive. Sienna will prove that information is never neutral. It's currency, and she intends to spend it. Burrow will learn that in Genoa City, solving a mystery doesn't end the danger, it relocates it into the hearts of everyone involved. Sharon, even if she never asked to be part of this, will feel the tremors because she always does. She's the emotional barometer for the town storms. And Victor will watch, calculate, and decide whether this explosion benefits him or threatens him, because Victor doesn't fear chaos, he fears chaos he didn't design. By the time the dust begins to rise, the audience won't just be asking what Audra did in LA, they'll be asking what Burrow is willing to do with what he knows. And whether Claire's determination has just opened a door that cannot be closed again. Because once a detective like Burrow becomes the keeper of a truth that powerful people want buried, the story stops being about secrets and becomes about survival. Romance has never existed in isolation in Genoa City, and if there is one rule that the young and the restless has proven over decades, it is that love is never just love, it is leverage. Vulnerability, motive, and sometimes the fuse that lights an explosion no one can stop. When it comes to Burrow, his romantic life may seem like a side note compared to murder cover-ups and buried evidence. But in truth, it may be the very element that turns him from a passive observer into an active threat. Right now, everything surrounding Burrow and Audra exists in the realm of speculation, whispered possibilities rather than confirmed facts. But the show has always thrived in that liminal space where suspicion becomes obsession. And it is almost darkly amusing that a cluster of characters tied to Los Angeles, Audra, Holden, Claire, and now Burrow, are all filtering back into Genoa City at roughly the same time. Like ghosts drifting home whether they want to or not. Y&R rarely does coincidence, and when an entire slice of a shared past migrates into one small town, it suggests that unfinished business is being deliberately dragged into the light. What makes this especially intriguing is that Burrow's potential romantic entanglements could easily overlap with his professional instincts, blurring the line between duty and desire. If Burrow forms an emotional connection in Genoa City, whether with Sharon or someone else, it grounds him there, gives him something to lose. and paradoxically makes him more dangerous to people like Audra. A man with no attachments can walk away from a truth that feels inconvenient. A man with emotional roots is far more likely to fight when that truth threatens the stability of the world he's beginning to care about. Romance in Y&R is never decorative, and if Burrow starts to feel that pull, it could quietly anchor him in GC long enough for buried Los Angeles secrets to catch up with everyone involved. That's the irony. The very thing that makes him seem distracted or human could be the reason he stays close enough to see the cracks in Audra's carefully constructed reality. Looking ahead, the question is not whether Genoa City will feel the impact of this convergence, but how violently it will unfold. Claire has already proven she is incapable of letting a mystery rest, especially when her instincts tell her that someone is lying with intention. She is not hunting Audra out of jealousy or rivalry. She is driven by a deeper need to expose rot before it spreads. Claire senses that Audra's past is not simply messy, but dangerous, and she understands that the truth Audra is hiding did not end in Los Angeles, it merely changed location. No matter how many doors close in her face, Claire will keep searching for something concrete, something damaging enough to stop Audra from rewriting history again. And that is where Burrow becomes a potential game changer, because Claire doesn't just need rumors or half-truths. She needs dirt, the kind that sticks even when someone tries to wash it away. Burrow's background as a police officer is what elevates this from speculation to a credible threat. If Audra and Holden were indeed responsible for a murder in Los Angeles, and if Burrow was active in law enforcement at that time, the odds that he crossed paths with the case even peripherally are far from slim. Police departments remember unresolved violence. They remember bodies that vanish instead of being buried properly, victims who become footnotes because no one can find them. Audra and Holden may believe they successfully disposed of the body, erased the physical evidence, and sealed the past shut, but that doesn't mean the system forgot. It only means the system never had enough to move forward. Burrow could possess internal knowledge about a suspect who was flagged but never charged, a man whose disappearance raised quiet alarms before the trail went cold. In that scenario, Audra's greatest mistake would not be the murder itself, but her assumption that silence equals erasure. The most chilling possibility is that Burrow doesn't even realize what he knows until the right moment. Imagine Claire, exhausted from chasing dead ends, speaking a name out loud in frustration, just a name, tossed into the air without realizing who is standing nearby. Burrow hears it, and something clicks, not dramatically, not with a gasp or a flashback montage, but with the slow, unmistakable recognition that comes from years of investigative work. Names are never just names to a cop. They are threads, and once pulled, they unravel entire histories. The phrase "where there's smoke, there's fire" exists for a reason, and in this case, the smoke may be nothing more than a careless comment overheard by the wrong person at exactly the wrong time. That moment alone could shift Burrow from neutral observer to active participant, because a cop doesn't unknow something once the connection is made. From there, the dominoes would fall with brutal inevitability. Burrow would start asking questions, not overtly, not recklessly, but quietly, the way professionals do when they are testing a theory. He wouldn't confront Audra directly, that would tip her off too soon. Instead, he would verify timelines, revisit old files, look for inconsistencies between what Audra claims and what the records suggest. The danger for Audra is that she thrives on controlling narratives in social and corporate spaces, but those skills are far less effective against someone trained to dismantle stories piece by piece. Audra can manipulate emotions, weaponize charm, and redirect suspicion. But she cannot easily erase documented anomalies or explain why a certain individual vanished without explanation at precisely the wrong time. Holden's involvement complicates things further, because his instinct will be to protect, to minimize damage, to convince himself that whatever they did was necessary or justified. But protection becomes complicity the moment the truth resurfaces, and Holden may find himself trapped between loyalty to Audra and the growing realization that the past is no longer containable. The romantic angle deepens the stakes rather than distracting from them. If Burrow becomes emotionally invested in Genoa City, if he starts to care about someone who represents stability, honesty, or redemption, his tolerance for corruption diminishes. Suddenly, this isn't just about an old case. It's about protecting the present from being poisoned by unresolved crimes. Audra's presence becomes more than a personal annoyance or a professional curiosity. She becomes a threat to the fragile equilibrium Burrow is beginning to value. That emotional investment could be exactly what pushes him to act, even when doing so risks his own safety or reputation. In Y&R, love often sharpens a character's moral clarity while simultaneously making their choices more dangerous. So the question practically answers itself: could Burrow be the one who helps Claire take Audra down? Not by playing hero in a dramatic confrontation, but by doing something far more devastating by validating Claire's suspicions with facts. Claire doesn't need Burrow to fight her battles. She needs him to confirm that she isn't imagining the darkness she senses. Once that confirmation exists, the balance of power shifts. Audra can deny accusations from rivals or dismiss concerns as jealousy, but she cannot so easily deflect scrutiny rooted in law enforcement memory and internal records. The real threat is not exposure in a social sense, but the reopening of a case that was never truly closed. The reclassification of a missing person into a homicide inquiry that leads straight back to her. And perhaps the most Y&R appropriate twist is that Burrow himself may not initially intend to help Claire take Audra down at all. He may simply be following professional instinct, satisfying curiosity, or protecting someone he's grown close to. But intent has never mattered as much as outcome in Genoa City. Once the truth begins to surface, it will not stop simply because someone changes their mind. Claire's persistence, Burrow's knowledge, and Audra's past would collide in a way that feels tragically earned rather than sensational, a slow-burn implosion driven by logic instead of coincidence. In the end, Burrow wouldn't be choosing sides so much as choosing reality over illusion, and in a town built on secrets. That choice alone could be enough to destroy Audra's carefully maintained world.